Welcome to the Magdalene Voices, giving voice to those silent for centuries through sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls. I am your host, Mariaestela. Today I am joined by Layla Saad. Layla is a writer, mentor, and healer for women doing their soul work and their soul's work. Through her work, she helps women to more fully express and embody their truth, both in their personal lives and their businesses. Layla's work explores womanhood, spirituality, creativity, business, personal power, and sacred activism. I want to preface this episode by saying that Layla and I had originally agreed that our conversation was to be about her unveiling as a Black Muslim woman. However, in the weekend before our recording, White Supremacists, Neo-nazists, and KKK marched openly in Charlottesville, Virginia. This sparked Layla to write a profound temple letter called I Need to Talk to Spiritual White Women About White Supremacy. A letter that, if you haven't already, I highly encourage you to read. You can find a link to the letter on my website, Mariaestela.com, or you can go straight to Layla's site, wildmysticwoman.com. Feeling as though we'd been brought together for a higher purpose, Layla and I decided to dive into the topic of white supremacy, patriarchy, racism, and the divine feminine. As you will hear and see, our conversation is open, raw, and real. It may bring up guilt, shame, fear, and blame. I know that it did for me. So before we begin, I want to remind you that it is far easier to criticize, judge, and project outwards than it is to truly sit with whatever arises within you, however dark it may be. It is, however, why you are here, and I welcome you. This is Layla and I's sacred conversation. Layla, welcome to the Magdalene Voices. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you. And I thought I was thrilled about having you on, but now that I have no idea where we're going to go, or perhaps just a slight idea, I'm even more thrilled because I know that we are being led by Mary Magdalene, by the goddesses, by Isis, by what I call Mama Divine, even though we are, I guess, millions of miles apart.
I'm so excited for this conversation, and Mary Magdalene has been very much in my field today. I've been writing a letter to my community about white supremacy and the role of white women in dismantling white supremacy and our roles as priestesses. And so she's just been there, she's just been there holding the space around me, kind of whispering encouragement, reminding me of the task, like the importance of the task that we have at hand.
Yeah. I'm trying not to start, burst out crying again, because I will share with the listeners and the viewers that before Layla and I went onto this call, I had a moment of, deep grief and sadness for what is going on in our world. And I think that's why I released kind of what this conversation is going to be about, because I feel that there is a need for us to be the vessels for what is trying to come through us. And I think one of the most sacred prayers that we can say is God, use me. And
yes.
But the one thing that has been on my mind in terms of you and your work, the word sacred activist keeps coming up for me, has been, or the word that comes up for me is unveiling. And the reason why unveiling comes up for me is because you are a unveiled Black Muslim. I know that's not what defines you really, but that is for me what began. Now I see it in a much bigger scale. But what I would like for us to dive into is the unveiling that I think we both see in the world, both on a personal level and on a global level. How do you feel about starting there?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah.
how did your unveiling begin?
My unveiling began, when you look back at things that have happened in your life and you can kind of see the seeds being planted along the way, but it was slow and you couldn't see the connections being made at the time, right? So I look back and I'm like, okay, I always felt other because I grew up Black, Muslim in the Western world. I went to Catholic schools for nearly all of my childhood.
Wow.
I knew all the prayers, all the hymns. I went to Mass with my class every week, but did not go up to receive communion. And I remember everyone else from my class getting up to go and get communion and me just sitting there, the odd one out, the other, the one that doesn't belong. Yeah. Right? And so these seeds were there from the beginning, this feeling of something isn't right with me. I don't belong here. I don't know where I belong. I don't know who I am. When I was about 18, 19, 20 years old, I went to university and I suffered from anxiety and depression, which I know happens to a lot of people at that age. What saved me was the world of self-help and personal development. That's what saved me. That's what stopped me from doing anything stupid to myself. But I remember not understanding why it was happening. Why am I sad? Why do I feel this way? And again, I look back now and I see you were searching for who you were and what your place was. And I've read about in the book Soulcraft by Bill Plotkin how we don't have this tradition. Modern society doesn't have this tradition of purposely, consciously putting its young people through initiations.
Oh, yeah.
And so we create initiations for ourselves, right? We self-initiate. We don't go off into the wilderness. We're not sent off into the wilderness by our community and so go out into the dark and find yourself. So we create these initiations for ourselves. And I think that was one initiation for me. And I've been through a number of those.
Yeah.
But again, I never really truly broke through. Clarity would come.
Yeah.
Healing would come for sure. But it never really pushed me through to the other side of that. Who am I really? Who is me? Until last year. So last year I was, so funny talking about it because it feels like 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was, I've been running my own business online since 2014. Getting to do that was that's a whole separate story, but I've been doing that since 2014. I was working as a women's leadership coach, as a business coach for women entrepreneurs. And then I wrote a post that went viral.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't connect the dots. I don't remember where I caught, but all of a sudden I realized, oh.
That was me. Yeah, that was me.
And you were veiled at the time, which I thought was beautiful because, the post was so strong. And it was, for me, it was another, because very often Muslim women who are veiled are being portrayed as being weak and whatever and suppressed and oppressed. And I just thought, here's this, strong, powerful woman who was speaking up against. And I think perhaps if it's still online somewhere that I should maybe, if I can find it, I'll link to it because
I'll send you the link. I've moved it from the original website that it was on and moved it to my current website just as an archive because I know people still access that article. For anyone who's listening, the article was called Why Those Six-Figure Business Coaches Are Failing You.
Yes.
So I wrote about the things that I was seeing in the online business world, particularly with certain types of business coaches, and how that just, for me, felt like they weren't truly being of service to people like me.
Yes.
And quite surprisingly, it went viral. I wasn't expecting that. I had a very small audience, a very small community. I wrote it just for my audience, and it suddenly exploded. Yes. But what that did was that it unveiled something. It unveiled something. I suddenly had like a spotlight shining on me. People suddenly knew me. People were familiar with my work. And as a highly sensitive, empathic person, that was very uncomfortable for me, actually. It was very uncomfortable for me. And what it did was it brought forward a self-sabotaging issue that I had no idea was sitting underneath the surface. Because I began self-sabotaging. I suddenly got success as according to what people have said is successful. Yes. And I didn't feel like working. I didn't want to do the work. And so I started working with a Reiki energy healer, and she helped me to see there is a mother wound here that is in the way. I'd never heard of the word mother wound, but I knew what she meant. Yes. So I started to do the work of discovering what this meant and how I could heal it, which led me to discovering the divine feminine and women's spirituality, energy work, what it is to be a priestess and a witch and a modern mystic. And it completely changed everything for me. Every single thing for me in my life. I was in on a descending layer upon layer upon layer, just stripping off everything. I was stripping away things that I was doing in my business, how I was showing up in the world physically. You know, as you said, I used to wear the veil. I don't anymore. That was part of that awakening. And I ended up shutting down that business and starting Wild Mystic Woman, because that's where my heart was led to. Yes. And so that, go ahead.
In your, I'm just curious, because what I'm hearing, because what I find that what you mentioned, and I will link to that book as well, about soulcraft, is it's also what I also hear in your journey is kind of what I see as the priestess path, because it's like we're you know, in the old ancient mystery schools and you know, Isis mystery schools and all this, the priestesses, I mean, that's where, you know, spirituality is not all about, you know, crystals and light and love. It's about unveiling, and a lot of that unveiling happens on the internal, like on the inside. And when you unveil on the inside, our external transforms. But and when it doesn't, it's important for us to go out into the world and do the work. So I'm wondering if those initiations, if you saw those also as a part of your priestess path, as mundane as they, quote unquote, they may have been in this physical world, were they also part of that? Or I don't know if this is a leading
question. You mean that last year's? Yeah. Very much so. And I think the thing that made the difference finally last year was that I had an understanding of this path. I didn't know about this path before. So when I would go into a dark night of the soul, when I would descend, I thought that there was something that needed to be fixed. Yes. I didn't see the wisdom of it. Whereas last year, discovering feminist spiritual writings helped me, it gave me a roadmap, you know, it gave me an understanding of this is actually very normal. This is the natural course of things. We descend and then we ascend. We descend and then we spiral in and we spiral out. And so having that understanding really early on in that journey helped me to surrender in a way that I had never done before. And I consciously made the decision to come undone. I said, I will come undone. Whatever you want me to strip away, I will strip it away, because I want to know what my truth is. Yes. And I can't know if there's all these layers, and I don't know what layers are mine and what layers are other people's. So if I can just strip it all out and get to like my base level, and just lay there for a while and listen, then I can hear what wants to come forth. Yeah.
It's very interesting, because I recently interviewed, and that conversation is up. I had a conversation with Suzanne Anderson, who co-wrote a book called The Way of the Mysterial Woman, how to upgrade how you live, love, and lead. And her co-author has actually found that the rise of the divine feminine that we experience currently is actually an evolutionary necessity, because we cannot solve the problems of yesterday with the same consciousness that you know started them. Not to say that, you know, it's not that, you know, the patriarchy or the males are to blame for this. It's simply a matter of they brought us to this place, and now there's something else that's required, and that is the divine feminine, and also I perceive Mary Magdalene to be a great teacher, you know, on the lines of, you know, she's aligned with, if not greater than, even Yeshua.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know how you see, because as I mentioned, as we are recording this, there is what could be called an uprising of white supremacy and neo-Nazism and racism, especially in the U.S. But I'm sure it's going on because that's being highlighted. I'm sure it's going on all over the world.
Right.
I see that. I wonder if it's not so much an uprising as it is an unveiling, so that these people are apparently feeling comfortable enough to come out into the open and into the light for us to see them. And on my part, I feel that gives us an opportunity to, first of all, speak up against it because it's not right. We are all one, and yeah, I don't want to go there because then I'll start throwing a fit. But so yeah, so I see it as an unveiling of us, for us to be able to heal it as humans, basically. Because as you mentioned, you just started writing, you're writing you know, these temple letters, and you've written on the rise, and also on the responsibility of us. When I say us, I mean me, the white women, to speak up. Can you tell me more, like, what do you see in terms of the unveiling? Because I feel, like I said, it's both on the personal level, both internal and externally, but it's also going on a global scale.
Yeah.
And we have a role to play and a responsibility.
So I have many things to say, and I'm going to try and say them in a way that logically makes sense, because there's a few different points. The first thing, though, that I want to say is that it is an unveiling, but it is an unveiling more for white people than it is for people of color.
True. Yes, that's probably right. Yes.
Right? So it's an issue of perspectives. People of color, people like me, we're very familiar with this. And if you live in the US, you're very familiar with this. This isn't brand new news. This has been going on and on and on for centuries, right? Yeah. So it's an unveiling in the sense that now they're emboldened to show up without their masks, but it's not brand new information.
No.
Right? So the shock that I'm seeing is more from people who aren't of color, white people, who are like, where is this coming from? Right? Where is this coming from? How could this happen?
Yes.
Who are these people? You know, not seeing how the systems have always been there in place that allow things like this to breed.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, we are all going through a collective unveiling. That is true. That I truly believe that. And I think that's why I see so many people going through their own spiritual awakenings, and why the world is like in the state that it's in, right? It's a mess. Yeah. What frustrates me is the women who I see, and I'm speaking about women because I speak to women mainly, but the women that I see who are doing both their inner work, like they're really devoted to their inner work, same as I was last year. They are doing their energy healing work. They're allowing themselves to surrender and to grieve. They're really doing their inner work, and they're also supporting their clients and their communities and doing their inner work. And yet they don't make the connection that the things that cause them to be so disconnected from themselves, like the things they are reclaiming for themselves, is caused by the same systems that are in place that perpetuate racism and white supremacy.
Yes.
So, for example, a big part of my personal journey last year was about patriarchy, much more than it was about race. It was much more about patriarchy. Yeah. But patriarchy and white supremacy are not two different systems.
No.
They're together.
Yeah.
They're layers of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so I see women who are very passionate about feminism.
Yeah.
And yet don't relate that to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And that infuriates me, because when I began reading about feminist spirituality, it was feminist spirituality.
Yeah.
And it was the teachers were from all different races.
Yes.
Right. And it is very much a political movement, not just a kind of individual. It's about my journey. It was very much a political movement. It's very much about our collective healing, which brings me to Mary Magdalene and Teachers of the Divine Feminine, because that's what they were about. They were about both your personal journey, but also how it relates to all of us.
Yes.
And what frustrates me is seeing people not make that connection.
Yes.
At all.
Yeah, and it's always so interesting to me when I don't know how to even categorize them. I would call them, most Christians don't realize that, Jesus was not a Christian. He was a Jew. Like, they consider him to be a rebel. That's why he was crucified. He was crucified because he stood for love, and he spoke out against oppressors of any kind. And from what we know of his teachings, even though, it's been truly whitewashed throughout centuries, and what's in the Bible has been whitewashed throughout centuries, the core message of love is still there, even though, everything that's not aligned with, a white man is a whore or sinner, or, or being called these horrified things. And it's, if you know Yeshua, and I first came, my connection to Mary Magdalene came through, I call him Yeshua because that's his Aramaic name.
Aramaic, yeah.
Yeah. And that came through A Course in Miracles. That was how I came to know Jesus, or Yeshua. And then somehow Mary Magdalene snuck in as well. At some point she snuck in as well. And but I find the Bible to be, as I said, completely whitewashed, and Christians don't realize that that's what he did. He spoke up against injustices. And so if people are not speaking up or standing up, but I will also say this, it's for me as a white race, born and raised in a democracy, I've had free access to healthcare and education and whatever. I love what you said about, it's not so much an unveiling for you, it's an unveiling for me and for the white folks, because this has been going on for centuries. And I think that's very important to stress. And I as much as I actually like people being outraged, and I love how you even unveiled me in that moment. I was like, yes, of course it is an unveiling on our part. What can be done? I guess my question is, what can be done? Because I know that for me personally, even, for a while, speaking up, like, what do you want me to say? Because I live in a primarily white community. I'm currently in Denmark. So I guess I'm like, what can I do? I'll share posts, I'll comment on Facebook, I'll do all these things, and I'll, for certainly speak up if I hear or see. I hope I will. I don't know. I also think, what would I have done had I been living in Germany during, before the Second World War? So what can we do?
I actually love that you brought in that example of Germany, because I have heard this question many times. What can I do? My heart's in the right place. I really want to be of service. I really want to help. What can I do? And I think about, if we were Germans in Germany during the time of Nazism, and Jews were asking for help.
Yes.
Would we ask them, well, what do you want me to do? Or would we just get to work?
Yes. Ooh, good. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your instinct to protect life, to stand for life, is there.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this over intellectualizing that gets in the way of just doing what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so the fear that I see, and I speak to this in the letter that I've been writing today to my community, the fear that I see is of not doing it perfectly.
Yes.
And that is actually, perfectionism comes from patriarchy and white supremacy.
Yikes.
Yeah. The divine feminine, when we journey with the divine feminine doesn't give a about perfectionism.
No.
She cares about heart and soul.
Yes.
You know, and you're going to do it wrong, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to be criticized,
Yes.
right? But you get up and you still get to work.
Yes.
And so, you know, I wrote this letter and I said, you know, I'm sharing some resources. There are so many people who are doing this work and who are speaking to white people about what you can do. And I say, I'm sharing this email with these resources, but there's also Google.
Yes.
Google is a great resource, and there's also your own intuition.
Yes.
So use them. You know, don't overthink it. Don't think about, how do I need to be an activist the way that other people think I should be an activist. Mm-hmm. You know, when sleeves need to be rolled up, yes, and work needs to be, you just get to work and you just do what you can do. Yeah. And it's, you know, I think so much about my role as a priestess. And I think so much about, what if I had been born at the time of, what if I was a priestess in ISIS's temples? You know, would we even be having these conversations? You just do the work. Yeah. But we're so inundated with information and with patriarchal expectation, perfectionism, that we get ourselves in a tizzy and then we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go into a spin and we just like, it goes into apathy, like where we're just we're numbed, or we don't know. And I know that I've been guilty of that myself, and I love the point that you were making, that do the work. I saw, as you were speaking, I saw this mother surrounding us, like, you know, she will fight fiercely for her cubs, like a mother lioness. She will fight fiercely for her cubs and will nurture and feed them, not thinking about how to nurture or feed them, but just simply by doing and by, you know, being.
It is instinctual.
Yes.
Which is why it's so important to do our inner work, because we've become so disconnected from our instincts, mm-hmm, right? But when we so we need to do our inner work. It is about our personal journeys, right? It is about reclaiming your voice. It is about reclaiming your intuition, yes, so that you can make that connection. And it is also about reclaiming your fierceness.
Yes.
Right? So you can just spring into action. Another thing that I see as part of the problem is, and maybe this is just how I'm seeing things, I feel like, and I'm speaking to white women because in my community, there are a lot of white women.
Yes. It sounds to me like that does mean that white women are waking up to the challenge. They may not, you know, be there quite yet, but if they were listening, I mean, that's a start rather than,
right.
Yeah.
I hope so, because what I see as the problem is the fear of actually being criticized by other white women, mm-hmm, who are their peers. Mm-hmm. So kind of like, why are you speaking about this? You never spoke about this before. And are you just jumping on the bandwagon of activism? And, you know, I saw that yesterday. I witnessed that conversation yesterday.
I thought that was an example.
No, that's a real example that I saw. It wasn't me, but it was someone, and I witnessed it and I saw it happen. You know, you're just and I've seen it happen a lot. So there's that, mm-hmm, and having to kind of explain yourself. And then I feel like there's also a fear of being criticized by people of color, of not doing it properly.
Yes, absolutely.
And we just want you to do it. We know you're going to make mistakes. We will call you out. We'll also call you in.
Yes.
But doing nothing because of those fears, like what I always say is, like, your fear is not greater than a person's right to their human rights. No. Your discomfort is not more important than someone being treated justly. Mm. So we have to really do the work of building our inner resilience and our inner courage and our inner fierceness, because we need all of us. It can't just be on the people of color. No, we need all of us.
And I mean, and we talked about this before going on the call. For me, you know, starting this show, one of the things that I was very adamant about was that I wanted to have, you know, every, like, people, yeah, of every color and every, you know, identity or sexuality or religion, join me, because it's, otherwise it would just be whitewashing, and that's not really what I'm here for. One of the things that comes up for me is but what's important, because I think the first thing is to recognize this is not okay, and this is what I stand for, and speak out against it. But I guess the second step for me, or what comes up for me, is it's also very important because I know this will sound cliche, but to quote Nelson Mandela, we're not born with hate. That's something that's being taught. And so I cannot help but think about those who the perpetrators or the abusers in this, because and what not to not I don't want to say that, but it's how do we reach those children before they grow into these adults that are like this? Because this is it's not okay. And I maybe I'm just judging, but I assume that having a life like that is horrible. That's a judgment on my part. But I have been in the place of hate. I've been in the places where it may have been self-hatred, but understanding those deep dark emotions, and I cannot imagine living there for a very long period of time, and for years and years. So I have compassion in my heart for those people who are in that, because I feel that speaking up and that's not enough. We have to be part of the solution of healing it as well. And yeah.
So here's what we need to remember. It's not on us as individuals to fix it all.
No.
And that, again, is another thing that I think gets in people's way of they are really truly coming from a good place, and they really truly want to be of service, but the problems are so big and we're so small.
Yes.
Right? But these problems did not start in our lifetime, and they might not be solved in our lifetime. And so this idea of we all need to do our part.
Yes.
Right? We all need to do our part, and we all need to do what we're called to do. I believe in the importance of really being connected to what your gifts are, and really using them. So my gifts, like my spiritual gift, are my words. That is something that I have been given, and I use it consciously to be of service.
Yes.
Right? I don't look like that person or that person the way they do their activism, the way they're showing up to be of healing. I do it my way. Right? And we have to trust that that's enough. Right? We have to trust that that's enough. I was having a conversation with one of my closest friends yesterday, and we were talking exactly about this. And we're both mothers of young children. And we're both entrepreneurs, and we were saying there's so much coming at us, and we want to do this work as well. And she was saying about how she's beginning to realize how it's important to just focus on the few things that she can do. And she gave me an example, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the person, but she told me the story of this woman who had sneaked Jewish kids out of Poland, I think, out of Warsaw.
Yes, I think she was a plumber, or yeah.
So she wasn't like, she didn't have like a big business platform, or she was an ordinary woman. But imagine the impact of that. She did that.
Yes.
And that changed those children's lives and the generations afterwards. And it still impacts us today just thinking about it. Right? So you don't have to do everything. You don't have to take on, again, this is the burden of patriarchy and white supremacy. It gives us this idea that we have to solve it all. We have to do it perfectly. We can't. It's not possible. We don't have the capacity to do that. But there's many things that we can do. And if we can just stay connected to what our gifts are and where our intuition is just yanking us, just telling us to do this. So you have been guided to do this Magdalene Voices series, and it's like you did not logically think about it. It was a calling. You have no idea where it's going to lead, and yet here we are having a conversation about white supremacy, which I'm sure when you started thinking about this series, you hadn't even thought we would be having this conversation. No, right? And so perhaps someone is listening to this conversation now, months from now, years from now, and it just makes an impact that activates something within them that encourages them to do something that then has an impact for other people. Right? So we don't need to be the ones who know how everything's going to work out.
No. What I've realized in my journey with the divine feminine and the divine masculine, because it's important for me to say that we need both of those in order to bring balance into the world, is that things are way better when I step away, when I let go. Because like I said, when I invited you into this conversation, at first I thought we were going to talk about you being a Black Muslim woman and you taking off your veil and your journey, but here the universe has brought this quote unquote perfect opportunity for us to talk about white supremacy and what it means to be living in this now. And I loved your, because I was going to say, what can I do about it now? But I love what you said about, do what you can, do what you're being called to. How do you see there was another question that I can't remember, because I was wondering, it was something that I was wondering about this morning, but for the life of me, I can't remember it right now. But what role do you see the divine feminine? Also, I wanted to make a point about the Magdalene Voices, and I told you this before we went on, is that I was having a conversation with one of my friends or a chat with one of my friends who is she's mixed, and she has Black children that are growing up, and I can't go into that because then I'll start crying about what she has to teach them.
Yes.
But I was chatting with her about, because I wanted to make sure that this show was not whitewashed, and I wanted to have it represent a lot of everyone, basically.
Yeah.
And as I did my research, I found it hard to find women of color, speaking out on the divine feminine, the divine masculine, Mary Magdalene, and those issues. And I was struck by this awareness, or whatever it was, that I'm like, the reason they're not speaking out about this is because they've got shit to deal with. Like we, quote unquote, the white women are speaking out about this because we only have to deal with, mundane problems like laundry, and sure, there's personal awakenings and priestess paths and so forth. But I have not on a continued daily basis experienced racism. I haven't experienced, being persecuted or, damaged. So the women, the mothers of the women of color who were speaking out today, they've been doing the work that you're talking, because they've been trying to keep their communities and their men safe. And so, and I had that realization, and I was struck by it, and I can't go in. I feel so saddened by it. There's a grief within me for that. But what I also love, and what I see, is that women of color, because that's what I knew. I released my wish to Mary Magdalene, or to the Divine Mother, and said, show me these women, because I wanna bring them here as well. And now you're here. And so I know that you've already sent me in different directions with other women, and more women are showing up, and So how do you, if any, what role do you see the divine feminine play in all of this? What does she play? What role does she play for you?
She's the She's the space holder and the activator. So she's the one who's holding. So today I was talking about how I'm writing this letter, and what I could feel was Mary Magdalene not telling me what to write, but holding the container of energy around me.
Yes.
Because what was being channeled was much more than my human self can really have the capacity to just do by myself.
Yes.
Right? This is not just me. No. These words are not just from me. And so I could feel her both holding the energetic container around me, but also the Divine Mother is the one stoking the fire. So I see her both as healer and activator.
Yes.
She's the safe space. So when I think of the safe space, I think of Mother Mary. I think of like her holding me and her holding that safe space. And then when I think about the fire, the activator, I think of Mary Magdalene. I think of Setmet, Kali. And so this is why the Divine Feminine is so important to me, is because she is this goddess of 10,000 names. She is not just one thing. She is not just the sweet mother who's holding you to her breast. She's also the one giving you a smackdown and telling you to wake the fuck up and get to work. Yes. Right? And so I was speaking with my friend yesterday about the messages I've been receiving lately from the goddess Isis, who's my primary guide. And I said, she came to me not in her high priestess energy, she came to me in her queen energy. Oh. So the high priestess energy is the come into the darkness, come into the mystery, surrender, listen, be quiet. But Isis, when she's in her queen energy, is listen to me, okay, roll your sleeves up, we have got work to do, you have been playing small. Yes. And it's time. Yes. Right? And so this is what I love about the goddess, is that she has so many different facets. Yes. And she helps me to see those facets within myself. She's not just some being out there. She's some energy out there. She's me. She's showing me different parts of myself that I can access. Yes. And I again can only speak from my own journey, but I don't think I could write the way I write without her presence. I don't think I'd have the courage to do it. I really don't. It's her. You have to blame it, like, oh, that's not me. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that comes up for me as you say that is because I will admit that that's something that I fell victim to, is that when I realized what I was here to do and in my own personal journey, I was totally overwhelmed by the quote unquote end goal. Like, you want me to do what? You want me to, I mean, like, what? Like, did you get the wrong person? Like,
right.
Are you sure this? And everything, I'm getting the goosebumps now, because everything I was hearing was like, yes, it's for you.
Yeah.
No, yes, you are the one.
Yeah.
Like, come on. So what came up for me recently was what can I do with what I have? And that, like, and that was very recently. It completely changed my mindset, was like, what can I do with what I have? Because very often when we see the long-term goals or the big, dreams or goals that we have, like, help raise the awareness and the consciousness of mankind. It's like,
I've got to do laundry.
I gotta clean my house. I gotta walk my dogs. Like what? Hold on with that, raise the level of consciousness for a human, and like, okay. But he was like, okay, what can I do with what I have? And that was like, that brought me into because it is so easy to fall into the, I can't do that, and I don't have that, and I need that, and I lack that, and if I don't, and all these things that we think that we need, but I'm sure you know this, I'm basically just putting out there that then when we are given a task,
it's not by chance. Like there's a reason for it. There's a reason why it's you that feels it calling. Yeah. And though you may not be like, you may not have a huge platform yet, or you may only be speaking to 3 people, but speak to those 3 people. And ask yourself, what can I do with what I have? And then you will find out. I'm sorry, I'm being, I have Kristen.
I'm loving it. It is, I'm seriously loving it.
It's not, so this is the rainbow and unicorn parts, but like, this is the only rainbow and unicorn there is in this whole conversation. No, so it's like, what can I do with what I have means, because it brings us back to like, okay, what can I do with what I have? And that, for me, that whole sentence, I use it in everything. What can I do with what I have? What can I do with whether it's something physical, whether I'm going to a birthday, and whether I'm going to to a party, whether I'm going just sitting at home. What can if I forgot to, do the grocery shopping, I'm like, what can I do with what I have? Like, I have some rice, and I have some beans, and I have some curry, and I'm blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you have a stew. And that's just, I just want to put it into a physical matter perspective, so it's not only just like spiritual, and it's you can use that everywhere, and especially for me in this discussion, when we're talking about white supremacy and the patriarchy, it's like, what can I do with what I have? And for me, I feel it's also important to say that for me, it's really not about dismantling the patriarchy. It's about creating a community, a world where we live together. And that starts with acknowledging that right now, not everyone have what I have, or have options or the same, even though I think that, in my little world, that of course I'm not discriminating and I'm not blah, 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 but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So I can't just sit here and say that. I have to stand up.
To open the what you can see. Right? Yeah. It's open your eyes and open up. Okay, there's a lot more going on here than I realized. And I feel like it's really important to say this. I'm being told to say this, is that don't let all of this make you then play small in your own work, right? And this is for everyone who's listening, right? Because it can get so overwhelming, and then you realize, shit, I haven't done anything, right? I've been complicit in some way with my silence.
Yes.
And then it makes you just like shut down.
Yes.
Right? And you get into such a level of self-doubt and shame and everything that you just stop. Right? And that happens, right? But don't then let that stop you from ever doing anything, right? Each one of us is here with our own divine tasks, with our own divine roles, with our own divinely given spiritual gifts. And we're here to use them. Doesn't mean that you have to become the next spiritual leader who has a book deal with I don't know who, and you're on Oprah's Super Soul 100 list. You don't need any of that, right? This isn't about that. It's really important to check ourselves on where our intentions are when we're doing our work, because that can really seep in.
Yes.
But each one of us, when I say you, I'm saying to everyone who's listening, you have your space to take up here in this lifetime. And it is your invitation and responsibility to fully inhabit all of who you are and all of what you are here to do. And it's not about it's like we have an ego, but we're not our ego, right? So your ego is like really important, because without it, you can't get anything done, right? So I'm not here to bash the ego. Ego is great, okay, but also you're just a vessel for the divine here. You're just a vessel, and maybe today the vessel that you're here to be, like maybe today the divine is like, I just want you to donate some money silently to an organization. Like that's your part here to play today. Or maybe your part to play is, I just want you to have a conversation with that one person about racism. Yeah. It doesn't have to be you don't have to do a webinar about it. You don't have to do a massive Facebook post about it, right? No. Maybe so it's really humbling ourselves.
Yes.
To to not let, like, when the ego turns into something that's not of service, it then tries to take over and is like, how can I make this about me? It's not about you.
No.
It's not about, so it is about you, but it's not about you. Right? And so we really, and I say we, and I'm speaking definitely to myself when I say this, but we really have to humble ourselves in our roles and how we are here to be of service.
Yeah, and that I feel is a balance. I have a question that's coming up for me, and I wanna dive into it if you're okay with it. Let's see.
Yeah.
Because the thing that comes up for me, because I know that you were in Qatar and
Yes.
Doha, yeah, and I wonder how, because I spoke to about earlier how a lot of the world see the Muslim women as being suppressed and oppressed and whatever. I'm sure that, and I guess that goes on everywhere with women basically. But I wonder how you see this rise of the divine feminine or her work within the Muslim community. Like, now I'm just speaking about the whole Muslim community. I'm asking you to
just speak on the whole Muslim community.
but what, like, how do you see that? How do you what do you see?
This is what's coming to me to say right now. I feel like, as you know, I'm in this kind of really odd but unique situation where my identities span East and West.
Yeah.
So I'm African, Arab, British, Muslim, living in the Middle East. I've had a divine feminine awakening, and my community that I serve are mostly white women in America and the UK and Europe and Australia. Yeah. I'm in a really odd position, okay? And I could definitely make that the argument to myself, and this has definitely come up before, who are you to speak on any of this? Yes. Right? Because, I'm like,
I wanna answer back, who are you or not? You are
right.
God. Like,
that's the soul part. Yeah. That's the soul part that comes forward.
On my wall, so yeah.
Yeah. But what I see is that, and it really links to what you were saying earlier about women of color and the divine feminine. What I see when I see talk about the divine feminine or work around the divine feminine, it is a very Western woman presented picture of what that is and what that looks like. We talked about this before we hit record on this. I talked about how Mary Magdalene actually wasn't a guide of mine for a long time because I associated her with white women. Yeah. Because that's all, it's the only people I see speaking about Mary Magdalene, a woman who definitely wasn't white.
Yes.
But it was like, well, that's not me. I don't feel a connection there. And so something that I think we have to be very cognizant of is that the divine feminine shows up in different ways. She always has. And she's always underneath the surface. Mm-hmm. So even if she isn't coming to people and saying, I am Mary Magdalene and I'm here to be your guide, doesn't mean that she's not there. Doesn't mean that she's not at work. I see things from my culture, my cultures span Arabic and African. Mm-hmm. Divine feminine is very present. Yes. She's not Kali Ma speaking to us, She's not Kuan Yin, but she's there.
Yes.
She's there. And I was speaking with my husband a couple of days ago about, in Islam, our final prophet is Prophet Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And how he actually he was a feminist for his time. And when you read about his character and the way he behaved in the world, he very much encapsulated both divine masculine and divine feminine.
Yes.
And the most powerful people that he surrounded himself with were the women. Yeah. So his wives and his daughter. And I was saying to my husband, he so revered his daughter. If she walked in the room, he would stand up and greet her. Mm-hmm. And when people walk in, he would just say hello. If she walked in, it would be, you're here, my daughter. He would get up so she could sit down. Mm. And I said, she was a priestess. Yes. She was a priestess. We don't have those terms in my religion. We don't talk about the divine feminine. We don't talk about priestessing. That's the role that she played, and that's the role that these women play. I also come from a family, especially on my mother's side, where the women are the stronger gender in my family. So all the women are very strong. Yes. That's the divine feminine. Yes. It doesn't have to look the way that we see it presented online. No. It She's there. She doesn't need our putting her into a box.
No.
You know, she doesn't need us to claim her and say, this is what it looks like when you have the divine feminine in your life. She's just there. She's running underneath everything.
And if you feel it. Yeah, it's a I guess a feeling or a sense most of all. I can feel this, like there's something else that's coming up, and it's like I'm like, ooh, but I'm gonna go there anyway because I felt it's important when you talked about Muhammad and his wives and his daughter, because one of the things that for me personally I believe has happened with the Bible and with the story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene is it has been whitewashed. And it has been not only whitewashed, but it has been transformed again and again to fit into the patriarchal ways, and it all has to do with money and power and politics and all that. Fine, and if you're listening, please just take whatever pluck in your earplugs if this doesn't float your boat, or leave the room, because that's really how I feel about it. And go with peace, inshallah. And what I see is humans created religion, and that goes for me, like whatever religion it is. There are great things about religion. It's not that, but it's more like when we go into an extremism, or when it's clear that it's judgmental or racist or whatever it is, and that comes from any religion. That doesn't.
Yes.
If we look at what Christians have done throughout the last 2,000 years, it's like.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this, I think, before going on the call, the witch burnings and everything. The Christianity has killed more people in the name of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
who was preaching love and peace. I admit to not knowing a lot about Muhammad, but what I do hear is that his message was one of love, peace, and unity as well. And that's what I find all of these that's what I found, that all of those that have had a religion build upon them, Buddha, Jesus, Hinduism, Muhammad, Islam, whatever, there always seems to be this boxing and dogma and doctrine that follows that was not really a part of their original teachings. Their original teachings were love, the message of love, and I wonder, do you see what I see, or do you see something different in the way of the teachings being distorted, but the original message being one of love?
So when I was going through my spiritual awakening, so I come from a Muslim family. We are, I guess you could describe us as kind of moderate Muslim, just your average, kind of in between, not too like relaxed, but not too extreme, just bang in the middle. When I was discovering the divine feminine, which isn't mentioned anywhere in my religion, and reading readings outside of what would be seen as acceptable in my religion. Mm-hmm. It was still really important for me not to say, then I don't want that to be my religion anymore. Mm. So I've seen women go through a spiritual awakening and saying, this religion no longer represents me. I leave this religion. I don't want anything to do with it. And I'm just going to be a spiritual person. I don't want to be a religious person. Yes. And I feared that would happen to me. That was one of my big fears, which is why it took so long for me to go there, right? I was really surprised that after everything I learned and everything I went through, this still felt like an important part of my life. And the reason it was so important is because I recognized that underneath everything, underneath all the kind of patriarchal bullshit that gets perpetuated through religion, underneath all of the shaming of women and denying of women's rights and all kinds of things that come with patriarchal religion, there was this beautiful truth of love and of light.
Yes.
And that's been my heritage and my lineage.
Yes.
And so instead of throwing it out the window and saying this no longer works for me because it comes with all of this baggage that has affected me so, what I've chosen to do instead is to connect to the underlying truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I might more likely describe myself as a Muslim mystic, although I don't, you know, we have a mystical side of Islam. It's Sufism. That's not my path.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about, you know, when Prophet Muhammad first had his revelation, he used to go by himself into the caves and meditate for days and days just by himself. He didn't even know what he was looking for. He just would do it, and everyone thought he was so weird. You know, and then one day Angel Gabriel came and gave him the revelation, which is the first lines of the Quran that he was given. And that is a mystical experience. He was so frightened. He ran home to his wife and he was shaking. And she had to cover him with a blanket and hold him and say, "What's wrong? What's happened?" And he told her what happened. And he said, "I don't know if this is real or not, or what's going on." And she said, yeah. And she reassured him that he was a good person. If God was speaking to him, then God was speaking to him. You know, and that's again that divine feminine. The message came to him, but she's the one who held him, held that energy around him and said, "It is true. This is your mission. You are here to do this." And she was the first one to accept Islam. The first person to accept Islam was a woman, was her.
Beautiful.
Right? So she held that space around him. But everything he went through, everything in his life, and all the prophets and all the messengers, everything they went through was a mystical experience. We look back on it now like it's stories, like you're telling a story from a book, and you're disconnected from just how mystical it is.
Yeah.
But it's super mystical.
Yes.
It's weird, and it's wonderful, and it's mysterious.
Yes.
When it comes to religion, I really see the importance of having both the mystical and the kind of concrete,
Yeah.
because I see it as divine masculine and divine feminine.
Yes.
So we all have, you know, if you're part of a religion, you have certain things that this is part of our religion, and these are kind of the guidelines of our religion. This is how that's there, and then there's the mystical, the divine feminine, and what I see is happening is, as we can see with so much, is that so much value is given just to the masculine, what we can see, what we can follow through on, what we can check boxes on, because it makes us feel certain. So much is given to that, and then the mystery is forgotten.
Yes.
The mystery is the divine feminine.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for me to stay in my religion, because I know she's there.
Yes.
I know she's there, and I want to discover her in my beautiful religion.
Yes.
I want to see what that looks like. She's this goddess of 10,000 names, and she's in my religion, she's in other people's religion, she's everywhere. I want to see what that looks like. And it's also really important, I think, to me, and maybe this is an identity that I've just chosen to like hold on to, but as you were saying earlier, there is so much judgment about what it means to be a Muslim woman. And it's just, ever since I started my business, I'm just like, I just want to break everyone's ideas of what they think that looks like.
Yeah. And I'm like,
right?
whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's about, breaking down the barriers, I suppose.
Completely. I've always been that kind of free-spirited rule breaker in a very like not in a very, I don't have a very, I have a strong personality, but not, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a soft side to it. And it's also, what I hear you say is also, or what I get is also that it's important for us to, because I went through a phase where I had to like work on a lot of forgiveness and stuff with priests.
Oh yeah.
Because I was born and raised in Denmark, and Denmark, I think, is one of the only industrialized countries in the world that still has a state religion. We have I guess Lutheran. I'm really not, but we have a Lutheran church, and whenever you're born, you're basically born into the church, and you have to kind of sign yourself out of it if you don't want to.
Oh, wow.
Even if you're even a child born to Muslim parents will be automatically added to the church, and then they kind of have to sign a form and quote unquote leave the church. But what I have found in Denmark, and that's one of the things where my pondering began, is that we also have a nation. We have churches on almost every street corner and Sunday services and yada yada, and the churches are empty because. And I find, for me, that's where the divine feminine comes in. It's simply because because of the way the religion, the Christianity has been evolving or developing over the past 2,000 years. It's and have cut out all of that mysticism and all of the sacred feminine and the divine feminine. People are feeling the lack and the need for it, and I think that's the reason why people are actually fleeing churches or fleeing Christianity. I love what you say about going back in there and embracing it and finding it, because I know that even within Christianity there are plenty that's coming forth about Mary Magdalene and her her gospel and teachings and her travels and where she went and so forth after the crucifixion. I feel like we could go on, but is there anything that we haven't touched? I think the only thing for me, I probably mentioned this, and maybe it is apparent, but I'm still going to say it, that for me it's about bringing a balance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, not only in the world but within ourselves. Because for me, as you mentioned, the divine feminine, she's the sacred holder, the space holder. For me, she's the being, while the divine masculine is the doing part. So when we combine those two, we create the sacred marriage. That's when we truly and fully embody our divine selves within human form.
Yeah.
But I wonder if we are to stop this conversation now, is there anything else you would like to say or share, or is there anything else?
Just feeling like I'm really feeling Mary Magdalene's presence, and it's really like she's just, it's like she's really content.
Yeah. Satisfied, full feeling, right?
Oh yeah. And it's like, and it's so interesting because we talked about many things that I didn't even know we were going to talk about.
Me neither.
And I'm really grateful because this is the first time we've ever talked.
Yes.
And I didn't know what to expect from this, being a part of this series, but I am just seeing, she's just like laying back, kind of reclining, really full. Yes. That makes me really happy. And I just really hope that this conversation has been of service. And I'm going to say this for both of us, there's going to be things that we've said here that may be presumptuous, that may be speaking in very broad terms. And that happens, that happens. And I know from my heart, and I'm sure from your heart, our intention is only to be of service.
Yes.
And so we apologize if anything has been overly generalized.
Yes.
But I feel like whoever is listening really gets the intention of where we're coming from, and the message of what has been said maybe without us even saying it.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the vibration and the energy with which we are doing this. And I know for my part, I can even feel my ego going, did you really say that? And did you really, like, what, like, seriously? And like, and I feel those, I guess, feelings stored in my DNA for centuries of having been killed for speaking my truth and being stake and, you know, persecuted, and all those past lifetimes where we're not, but the truth of the matter is that we live in a very, very fortunate time where we are able to speak our mind and share our truth with people, and I'm so glad that you voiced it, because that is where I'm coming from, is a place of love, even, and that importance transcends my human fears of,
yes,
am I really going to put this out? But I am, because I hope it, as you say, that it will serve those who come to hear it.
I feel Mary Magdalene saying, like, even when I spoke, I had the same fears.
Yes.
You know, even when I spoke, I got things wrong.
Yes.
You know, or overgeneralized or whatever. But she's like, but you still have to speak.
We still have to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you, Layla.
Thank you.
That is what we had for you in today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. I hope it served you well. If you are listening to this via podcast, know that you can go to my website, Mariaestela.com. That's Mariaestela.com for all of the deeds and the details. Finally, I hope you will take a moment to either leave us a comment or review and share it with your friends on social media. God bless.